What up, guys? So today's question comes from Zach, who is a, not a small guy, about $170, right? And he's trying to add more pressure on top. He says that a lot of times he's able to get to top positions like mount and side control, but he doesn't have the top pressure that he would like because he can just tell that it's not on the person and they don't have the same reactions that he has when he's on the bottom, which is, a lot of times they're like smashed and they have that labored breathing, that sort of thing. So he's wondering if the Chewjitsu can show him how to add a little bit more pressure from top. So Zach, thanks for the question, brother. I'm gonna show you a couple of simple tips. One in particular that changed my pressure from top forever. It's like one of those things where once I started doing this, I was able to add more pressure from my body weight and also use less strength and less energy and zap the person on the bottom, which again, when we're talking about top pressure, that's really what we want, right? We want to be able to put the person on the bottom and cook them. So they're underneath of you, they can't breathe, they're very uncomfortable, and their energy is just dropping, right? Until all of a sudden they start making mistakes. And even really good black belts, right? When they get tired enough, fatigue turns us into something else, right? Fatigue will take someone who's very skilled, very technical, takes a black belt, makes them a blue belt, white belt, whatever. Just like, there's an old saying, right? You take a black belt, you punch them one time, now they're a brown belt, punch them again, they're a purple belt. The same thing happens with fatigue. And so if you get someone underneath a good tight top pressure, we can make that happen. And I'm gonna show you a few tips on how to do it. So let's talk about one that's really important. I've talked about this on the channel before, but it's huge. It's something that a lot of people just don't do it, but it's that important if you do it. And that is gonna be to use the muscles that are gonna seem kind of contradictory to add the pressure on top. So here's what a lot of people do in their first several years of jiu-jitsu if they don't know any better. And hell, I did this up until like purple belt. They get here and they start squeezing, right, really tight with their arms and upper body. Matt, how do you feel?
I feel okay, it sucks.
It sucks, but it's not too bad. Here's what we're gonna do instead. Let's say we're in side control. First things first, we'd like a little extra shoulder pressure. So I'm gonna get this middle finger into the middle of the armpit right there, the lat, and I pull the elbow back, and we call this the shoulder of justice at my gym, okay? Shoulder of justice is now secured. Now, from here, I'm not gonna sit here on top and just lay on them. I'm actually gonna sink my weight in side control. There's different ways to hold this, but right now we're just trying to be heavy. So I'm gonna sink my weight. So if you wanna think about the center line here going down here, I'm actually gonna sit my weight primarily over on this one side. This will present a few advantages, especially if the person's bigger. If he's bigger and I'm on top of the center line, he can start rocking side to side. So by placing my body off center, it allows a lot more weight to be on my shoulder driving into his face. So right now, when I feel about where most of my weight's placed, where I feel that pressure pushing back, it's in my right shoulder right into his face. Here's the big tip. This is the one I really want you to get. It's gonna be the use of our upper back muscles. This is the one that a lot of people they don't get at first. And then once you start using it, again, I wish I started doing this as a white belt. It would make my top pressure so much better. So from here, we get in, and then I'm gonna flex my upper back, and push down. Now I'm not laboring, I'm not like pushing hard, but you can tell from Matt how you feel.
It sucks, it's awful.
I'm pushing in. So think about what we're doing. Matt's body's here. Instead of just trying to squeeze him and burn our grips out, I'm pushing in like this. So his body's down here, I'm grabbing, pulling everything in, and I'm pulling in by straightening up my back and flexing my upper back muscles. They're big muscles that will do a lot of pressing into them. And again, that is a much more efficient way for me to add a lot of pressure on Matt. We can also do this from mount. Again, if we're in some sort of mount position, name of the game should be first securing at least an underhook and a head. We don't wanna try to squeeze on the person if he's got his arms down, right? We wanna start immediately isolating arms and getting across here. But it's the same thing. If I get here and I'm holding the person down, right? And I'm trying to set up these arm attacks and these neck attacks here, if I just want to be heavy on them for a little bit, right? What do I want to do? I don't want to just be squeezing with my arms. I want to be arching my back, pushing into them, and again, making it very uncomfortable. I can put all my weight down here. And again, this is awful. It's a terrible position. It's hard to breathe. So one of the big things that I would tell you first is to really be focused on putting your pressure into the person by flexing your upper back and pushing your chest down into the person. That was a big key for me as far as top pressure. Really simple thing, but again, it's one of those things where if you're not doing it right now, you watching at home like, I don't know if that would work. If you don't do it right now, the next time you go train and you go to your gym and you do side control, just feel what happens when you push into your chest like that. Just get a feel for it. Here's another tip. Let's get his face into the mix, right? So from here, like I could be in side control here, and putting pressure, but with his head able to move wherever he wants it to, that's gonna be a problem. One, it's not as uncomfortable for him. And again, we wanna make this position as uncomfortable for the person on the bottom, right? But two, it also allows him to begin to turn back towards me. There we go. And he can start to work for escapes, things like that. So again, we were talking about the shoulder of justice, middle finger to the armpit, pulling the elbow back and really dropping our pressure into him, right? By controlling his face, man, is this uncomfortable, and also it locks him out. He cannot turn towards me. His face is locked. He can turn this direction, but he can't turn back this direction. And why is that significant in side control? One of his basic escapes would be to try to bring this knee back in, right? If his face is this side, he cannot turn his back and his hips all the way to the side. It just doesn't work. Now, going to mount, when we get underneath of his neck, we got underneath of his arm here, we're in this position. If he's turned away from me, I don't want that. And so what I'll do is I'll take my face and drive it into his mouth and his nose and wipe him across here, right? Again, one more time. He's facing straight or facing here. I'm gonna go across, wipe it right there. And again, what this allows me to do is put a lot of pressure on his face and make it super uncomfortable as we do our upper back extensions and everything else into this position. So again, putting all our pressure on him. And again, when you're there, just like in side control, you should tune into where do you feel heavy. One of the things that I see from a lot of guys in their first couple of years of jiu-jitsu, when they're in mount, is they put, especially when they get the arm isolated, they put too much pressure on the knees. If I'm here on mat right now in this position, if I'm in this spot and I'm like this, there's so much weight on my knees, it's very hard to be heavy on mat. However, if I take my legs, I dig the spurs in, having my legs glued to his hips, either crossed or just touching, I can now literally take my knees. If you look at them right now, I can lift my knees up off the ground, which means I'm very light on them. And at one point, I have very little pressure on the mat. I have all my pressure on mat. That's important because again, that means he's supporting our weight. That means that it's gonna be harder for him to breathe, especially in a mountain position where we're laying right here. It's gonna be hard for his diaphragm to fully expand. All of our weight's just sitting there. It's a brutal position, And so again, those are, I could go on for probably like an hour and a half talking about tips on pressure, but those are a couple that really, those were big game changers to me back in the day when I was making sure I was always getting the face involved, putting that pressure onto it, and then making sure that I was making the most of the body, not just by squeezing, but by driving my chest into him, by flexing my upper back. So Zach, thank you for the question, brother. Hopefully that helps you, and I'll talk to you guys next time.